I will say though, and my team is sometimes frustrated with me, I'm constantly reevaluating how we structure the team and what goes where.
How do you go about like VP plus type level role?
Is there someone that I've worked with before that I love and want to get into process who's coming as strongly, as a strong referral from people that I trust and respect as well? That's obviously the first port of call.
And that may be another way to test for builders, right? It's just like managers are going to stay at that level and
Yes.
high level, and builders are going to be able to tell you everything about a project.
We expect impact pretty quickly. We're not one of those companies where it's like, oh, you're going to take 6 months to get settled in and then maybe by the end of it. No, like I'm looking for impact in your first 3 months.
I've kind of put that in our case study guidance, which is if you're going to interview with a PLG company, you damn well better use their product. Welcome to How I Hire, the podcast where we talk with senior leaders about how they find, vet, attract, and grow go-to-market talent. I'm Andy, founder of Blissberg. Today, I'm joined by Jessica Chiew. Jessica is the global head of go-to-market strategy and ops at Canva, where she leads B2B sales strategy and a lot more. I'm sure she's thinking about growing the B2B business. Jessica also worked at Asana, where she led revenue strategy and analytics. So if there's somebody that knows PLG and how to grow a great PLG company, it's Jessica. Jessica's also from Melbourne, which I figured out as soon as I heard her accent. I spent a lot of time there when I was at Culture Amp, a beautiful, amazing city. Jessica, great to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Andy. And yeah, I work at a great Australian company right now, so it's fun that you worked at another great one as well, at Culture.
There are some amazing ones, and they keep popping up because they've got this isolated area to experiment with
Yeah.
things. I think it's always interesting when Australian companies decide to take that step to the US as well too, which maybe we won't talk too much about today, but it's fun. So maybe, first question, PLG really well. I'm curious how you think about building out teams or if there's specific things you're trying to assess, whether it's data fluency or other characteristics like that.
Yeah, PLGs are a really unique and interesting space. I think if I've definitely tried to do this, but I love hiring people with PLG experience and some pattern recognition. But it's hard because I think you could kind of count the number of successful PLG companies on maybe one, maybe two hands. And so it's a limited pool. I don't think you can hire exclusively from there. So I love to have a few folks on the team who have that. And I do, on my team, I've got some Asana, some Grammarly as well. But I think the most important thing to hiring people who will thrive in an environment where you've got almost two businesses in one, right? Self-serve and enterprise, is you have to have people who are good first principles problem solvers. That's kind of goes without saying. But I also think people who understand the customer journey as a concept. I know it's kind of an overused term and concept, but I think really people who are obsessed with focusing on what's the experience for the customer, how do they seamlessly move from one to the other and like zoom out outside of just the more traditional enterprise funnel, which is, you find an executive contact, they buy top down. It's a bit more nuanced and it's more elongated than that. So that's what we kind of test for.
I couldn't agree more. Every time I show up at a company, I've been at a number of like low ACV. They haven't all been full PLG, but Box definitely was.
Yeah.
And Carta was, I wouldn't really describe it as PLG, but it was definitely like low ACV.
Yeah.
And you get there and everyone comes to you and says, Andy, there are 8 to 9 email systems and we're tripping over each other and it's a total mess. And so I think very rare, people can be a little bit isolated sometimes in terms of their thing. But I think your point on like understanding the customer journey, being able to talk about that is really critical. How do you assess for that like customer journey fluency when you're interviewing?
I think first is like for whatever company they've come from, you ask them to describe it, right? And so if it's something they've not spoken to before, it comes kind of obvious. If they start talking about MQLs and SQLs, that's very like us, like ops or sales team led language. And so if they can speak to the language of the customer, that's helpful. And then I think you can start to problem solve, which is like, even if they haven't come from a PLG company, you kind of describe for us at Canva, I'll make this up, someone at Nike, they might be in a sales cycle now, but at some point 3, 4, 5 years ago, the first person at Nike swiped a credit card and created the Canva, the Nike domain on Canva. And so you kind of play back, that's what it looks like. How do you modify your approach knowing that, right? Like if you've got we've got at this point, 260 million MAUs, like this is an incredible asset for you that you might not have had at other companies that you've been at. Like, how would you tap into that? What do you think the opportunity is? And see how flexible their mind is, I think, um to adapting their approach where really we do have this incredible end user brand awareness that they may not have had in more traditional top-down enterprise settings.
I like that a lot. What does the GTM leadership team look like, and how is it structured at a PLG company like Canva versus? And I know you've probably lived most of your career at these, but I'm
Yeah.
imagining it's structured differently, right? Because product needs to have a role in a discussion in that. But how is yours structured? And maybe
Great.
I'll take Asana one
Great
too.
question. So I kind of think about if I think about the team, the leadership team that I sit on, it looks like a traditional sales org, I would say. So me and my boss, our chief commercial officer, really sit in two teams at Canva. So one is our core sales and success go to market leadership team. We've got regional sales leaders, vertical sales leaders, a global customer success leader, and a channel business. Right. So that's our core team. The other team that we sit on, though, it looks a little different, I think, than folks who haven't been in a PLG setting, is a team with the broader set of leaders that span our product org, our growth team, which is a product monetization organization, and a very, very strong set of partners on the data side as well. And so that broader team is the one that's really bringing to life the journey for all of our B2B customers, whether they are still on the online phase of their journey or whether they are, on a multi-year ELA with us. And so I think balancing those two teams, our more immediate day to day, we're still a sales org that has quarterly rhythm and quarterly targets, but we sit in this other, bigger team and more expansive team within Canva as well.
That's neat. They always say, like, what's the team or the tribe you feel like you're on in a company? And then I heard somebody say the other day, it's like, everyone wear the sweatshirt with the logo of the swag of the team you feel like you're on,
Yeah.
and you'll really find out what team people feel like. So those are interesting. One kind of interesting observation I've had around ops teams at PLG companies is they tend to be lower staffed than I would expect, given how important data is. And I also understand it, right? Because you have less commission, less routing type of issues typically.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, like, how do you think about your team, its remit, and like, I don't know exactly know how to ask it, but like, I know a number of $100 million plus PLG companies where I'm shocked that they'll have like ops teams of 2 or 1.
Mhm.
And so I'm curious how your team's designed and how you think about that.
Great question. I mean, I feel like Canva and our company leadership really gets the vision of, the role of sales and the potential of sales. So we are a well-staffed team. I don't think we're in that zone of, we've got 2 analysts running. We were when I joined, I would say. We had a couple of analysts. The way that we've structured the team is I kind of have the core ops pillars, and this is your world too, Andy, but we've got a systems team, a sales ops team, an enablement team, and then I have some other teams that I think help us. It might be specific to PLG that really help us bridge into the rest of the company and across that broader customer journey we're talking about. So I have a sales strategy team that really is about not only the standard stuff of building the annual plan, but really thinking about what is the coordinated plan across every function at Canva to drive, B2B growth. So less field facing and more thinking about the bigger plan. I've got a growth leader as well. And so while there is a very large growth organization sitting in Sydney, we also have a dedicated person who is embedded within sales and success bridging. We have an AI lead, which I'm happy to speak to as well, but we made the change earlier this year to have a dedicated team built out and, in support of our AI efforts. And yeah, so I think some of those like extra teams, which might be a team of one, to be frank, we're trying to be efficient with resources too, really are quite unique and make sure that we've got people solely focused on connecting with broader Canva and the bigger picture outside of just commission, quota, territories, and all that stuff that we live and breathe as well.
I'm a big fan of AI being aligned with the ops and strategy functions versus being a separate. I think it's so easy to show quick wins on AI, but to have those things embedded into the overall motion, you need to have the systems
Yeah.
and product pieces as well too.
Yeah, agree. It's very easy to get things live and have cool experimentation, but for things to transform workflows and transform roles, it's kind of finale stuff to me. So we've benefited a lot from having that dedicated focus, and then obviously benefit a lot from Canva as a company being very invested overall in empowering the entire employee base with AI and whatever tool we need as well.
I love that. Maybe shifting over to how do you design, like, you took over the team. How do you figure out what are the rules you need, and then kind of getting everybody aligned, and how do you prepare before you start recruiting?
I think in joining any company and taking on a team, it starts with, all right, what are the business objectives? Okay, what are the team we need in place? And for us, that looked pretty stock standard. We didn't have an ops team, so we had to build that out. We had a emerging enablement team, but as the team scales and our seller base scales, we really needed to invest there. So business priorities mapping to the team. I will say though, and my team is sometimes frustrated with me, I'm constantly reevaluating how we structure the team and what goes where, and if we need to combine scope or shift scope around. I think that's just the nature of being in a fast growth, fast moving environment. And I actually have to ask my leadership team to be a little bit flexible and dynamic with me as well. It's all done in service of kind of the company and hitting our goals, but I'm always keeping them top of mind in their career growth as well. But I'm mixing things up all the time, to be frank, Andy. And yeah, it's something I have to ask them to come along for the ride on, because it's there's no one size fits all. And when you're growing as fast as we are, the business is different every 6 months, and so as a team, there's an opportunity for us to shift and adapt to that too.
I like that. I mean, I hear there are a lot of I tend to try to give that stability for my people, but I'm also, when I'm running a team, trying to move people around. And so if you've got a MOPS person, they may just be limited to MOPS. And so let's move them to SOPs. I
It's
did
good
a
for
ton of
their own
that.
experience and, building out their experience set and, maybe it's permanent, maybe it's an interim thing, but I think, yeah, it's good for individuals as well.
Yeah, you kind of it's cool that you're self-aware that you are kind of mixing it up. What's driving that mixing up of the team? Is that a constant realignment with the business itself? Is that a pushing people harder to do that, or is that like trying to maybe like reduce silos, or how do you think about that?
All of the above. I also think it is playing to people's strengths as well, right? So as new leaders come on board and we get to know them, there's, because we are not a traditional, just like pure enterprise sales business, and there's a clear blueprint for how we support from an ops perspective, there's different areas that we're always like leaning into and stretching into as well. And so I'll try to give you some examples, but we just launched a new SKU at our most recent big product announcement, and there's a central pricing and packaging team in Sydney, but they're really focused on the online piece, and so we realized that we need to lean in there. So I've got one fantastic leader on my team who I'm like, go and work on those things. And now, if that's going to be a more regular fixture of the work that we do, I want to flex that person in that direction. And so it's kind of a bit of everything, flexing and
Here's a question I've never asked anybody on this podcast, but I'm curious to
like,
ask.
you're
How
excited.
do you I think if you move people around and you shift them around, but you give them psychological safety, it's okay, right? Like if I'm like, I know Jessica's got my back and I know she's also going to shift me around, that's good. I think sometimes like you look at an Elon Musk type company, like no psychological safety. And so I'm curious, like, how do you make people comfortable with that constant movement on your side?
Yeah. Well, I think it helps when I'm pretty upfront where I'm like, I need you to do this because the business has needs and I'm asking for a favor. But I think you have to build that trust and get to know people and have people understand you and your motivations as a leader. It's doesn't just happen in a moment. It has to be something that you kind of live and breathe all the time. And so, I've been on a journey personally. I think earlier in my career, because I grew up from a very formal environment of consulting, it took me a while to be a very open and vulnerable leader, but that's who I am today. And I share with my team how I'm feeling and where I feel like we're not providing the right support to the business, where I think that we're doing a great job. And so yeah, being open with them, I think they kind of know me. And so when I ask them to, hey, I need you to stretch in this direction or I need you to flex in that direction, hopefully they understand my core motivations, which is always us being the best team we can be. And I'm very competitive. I want us to hit our goals and be great. So
I love that. My best leaders that I've worked for have been incredibly vulnerable, and it helps. I think that actually creates the comfort. I'm like, if I know Jessica's, I think there's a balance, right? Like if you go off the deep end and you're really struggling for multiple months and you're
yes.
struggling with your boss, then if you're vulnerable, you can actually spiral
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Uh,
And yeah. Yeah.
but I think if you're comfortable with your boss and your boss is vulnerable, and then you can also be vulnerable to your team below them, it creates a really great positive environment for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've been there too, and it's a fine balance though. You don't want to overshare, and you want to give the team some protection and shield them from everything that's going on as well. But I don't think there's any harm in being an open book too.
No, I always give the speech to people like, I am going to be transparent with you until I realize you can't be. I can't be. And if I realize I can't be, like, we will have a conversation and we will adjust. And so I think that's always a fun one to
Yeah.
figure out. We were talking before we hit record on experience versus builders, which I think is just a fascinating topic, right? Like, it's the classic debate right now of I need people to get their hands dirty, but I also need pattern recognition. I'd love to hear how you think about that.
Yeah, it's something, so we've, as I said, when I joined Canva only 2 years ago, we didn't have much in place. So I've been on a leadership hiring frenzy, so this is top of mind. It's tough. In some ways, I love experience and I love pattern recognition because we're moving fast, and I'm thinking about a systems leader that we built out. Like, we just hired and we've got work we need to implement CPQ. Like, I can't take a first principles problem, so like, we need someone who's been there, done that before. And I also really want to, for where we are in our journey, I want to bring on people with like great enterprise experience. I think the problem though, Andy, maybe you've got a great network, is like people who have been in large enterprise organizations for a long time as well. Sometimes they are, they've been in their box and they've been in large scaled environments, very structured environments, may not be also a great fit for like the fast moving, high growth environment that we find ourselves in now. So it's a hard balance. You want some of that experience, but also it's not always a great fit. So first is like I've taken a bit of a portfolio approach to my team. I'm happy to have some pure enterprise, scaled experience with some athletes as well built out. So as a team, we can have a good portfolio. But I really think that even for the people who come in with lots of large company experience, I need to look for folks who are builders. And if they've been at a startup or a couple startups in and amongst their career journey, that gives me some comfort. But I think it's something you really have to test for so you can get a bit of the best of both worlds.
How do you I agree. How do you test if somebody is a builder?
It's really hard because you ask anybody, "Do you like building?" I mean, they know where they're interviewing. They're gonna say, "Yeah, I love building, and I'm a builder, and that's what's frustrating me about my current role." But I think it's hard to test for. The analogy I use is, if you are building is like, being in a room and there's like a ton of rocks and boulders everywhere. If you ask someone, do you like building? Which really means, do you like picking up one of those rocks and getting your hands dirty and doing the hard work and lifting it and clearing it out of the room? Everyone's going to say yes. I think real builders, though, are like, I've been in rooms where there's rocks and rubble and pebbles, and it doesn't overwhelm me. It energizes me that I've got all this work ahead to go one by one, pick up those rocks and clear them out of the room. So I think it's like you ask questions like, hey, can you tell me, like, give me an example of where things weren't going well? And I'd be concerned if they're like, "Oh, there's one quarter, where we're about to miss target." No, I wanna hear like, "Hey, there was a quarter we're about to miss target. We had a product launch coming up. I was, being held accountable to doubling my team. We were running out of office space, like, and that was a fun, exciting experience for me, So I think it's, just figuring out a little bit, what building looks and feels like for them and finding those examples to give you comfort that you can get the experience plus the great kind of grit and mindset, that you need.
I like that. The other thing I maybe use, I'd be curious yours is I've always used this like, can you pull your own data as a proxy?
I love
Or
that.
like if you can pull your own data, that means you don't have a problem getting your hands dirty, learning the architecture and doing that. And so I kind of started to get to a point when SQL, I remember at Box, they had this course
Yeah.
and the head of analytics would teach it every quarter. And anybody could get nominated by their manager and they could take the course and they would learn how to write SQL. And then they could help their department do this stuff. I would always hire those people.
Mm.
The top grads of those classes, like I've seen go on to run like Analytics at Stripe, work
Love
in
it.
Atlassian, all
Yeah.
these different places. And so for me, the ability to pull data maybe defines it a little bit. And then I think obviously, as you and I talked before the recording, if you've only been at big, you're probably playing a political game, but I need you to be comfortable not having all of the resources and getting
That's
getting
right.
into smaller teams as well.
Yeah. I love that SQL example. The other thing I do, and I think this is an approach a lot of people take, but in every interview, I mean, I interview almost exclusively for go-to-market roles, right? So sales and marketing professionals who are great salespeople and are gonna tell you a great story. But I have a discipline where I almost ask like the 4th or 5th layer question below the headline question, right? So I'll give you an example. You're hiring for a CS leader. Okay. First question is like, tell me about like, what does the future of customer success look like for you? Okay, they're going to say, oh, I think it's a modern journey that's largely digital and, get scale. Cool. Talk to me about an example of what does that actually look like at your current role or previous role? What did you roll out in service? Oh, okay, we rolled out a tech touch digital journey, and okay, what were the points of that journey, right? Like across the first year before you head into a renewal, like what were the points? Okay, how did you measure the impact of that? What was the impact? What was hard about getting that project live? And I think you can pretty quickly, like everyone can answer the first level, probably the second level question. But I think when you're looking for leaders who lead from the front and are comfortable being in the detail and knocking down the roadblocks, like you can pretty much tell by the third or fourth layer whether they know their stuff or they're just telling a story that they've told, refined over 3, 4, 5 interviews.
I use similar. One other thing I've layered on the top is I give them a false choice.
I
So
didn't.
basically, I find that if you just start going deep, they can kind of feel like, oh, they went deep on an area I didn't know. So I'll simply say, like, I'm going to name 3 topics.
Yep.
You pick one,
Oh, I like
and then
that.
I'll go as deep as possible. So I had one
Gives
person.
them a bit of option, so you're yeah.
Yeah, I was interviewing a ops person. I said, so ROI, attribution, or like routing. And the person picked ROI. I was like, cool, give me the numerator, denominator. Uh,
I love it.
and that person struggled. And it was like, I think they could see that I was just going to keep going down until we ended the interview there. Right. It was like I knew that they didn't actually know their stuff. And that may be another way to test for builders, right? But it's just like managers are going to stay at that level and
Yes.
high level, and builders are going to be able to tell you everything about a project.
But I think I mean, I use this even when I'm interviewing for, like, senior kind of VP or exec roles as well, because I think the modern leaders, especially with AI, like, you have to be in the detail. We can't just come and roll out playbooks that it's things are changing, and so I think unless you can show that you have stronger perspectives below just the priority level or here's what I think it's kind of critical as things are shifting.
So how do you assess for AI? I think that one's really interesting for me. It's kind of like, are you a builder? Now are you a builder in AI? And I think we've all gone on this journey, right? Which is let's just use it. And then that mostly doesn't work.
Yeah.
But what are you looking for on your teams or across the go to market in terms of AI fluency today?
Yeah, well, I look for curiosity across everyone. That's a no-brainer. And then I'm also looking for some experience, and I wouldn't say that we're at the point where I need people to have a track record, but I need you to not only be curious, but have actually tried to implement stuff and to have some understanding or awareness about what is or isn't hard with AI right now. So I just ask for one, I say, hey, how are you approaching AI in your own personal and day-to-day workflows at work? Everyone's got great answers, everyone's experimenting. Okay, what projects have you driven or been involved in with AI? Did they work or did they not? Because I think not everything's working, right? And so I want some of that. I want them. I'm happy with them to say, "Hey, we tried this and it didn't quite pan out." But I need them to have not only been curious, but to have actually gone in and tried things.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think the idea that you're just throwing text in there is not sufficient right now.
So exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
so say you decide to hire a role, like
Mhm.
senior level roles, like how do you go about like sourcing for those, looking for those, like a VP plus type level role?
I love it. Well, we actually I know, I've talked to other, guests on this podcast about it, and we actually do post every role eventually, I will say, so there's some nuance behind that, but, I'm not opposed to broadcasting to the world that we're looking because, I've only got so many hours in the day. I can reach my network and let them know, but there's, people in my network and the networks of my colleagues as well for them to know that a role is out there. It does help even with the more private referrals that come in. But it doesn't typically start there. As soon as I think there's a need on the team, I will start recruiting. So I'll chat with you, Randy. I'll reach out to my network, and then tap into the network of my colleagues and my peers, my team as well. And so I'm always looking for, is there someone that I've worked with before that I love and want to get into process? Who's coming as strongly, as a strong referral from people that I trust and respect as well. That's obviously the first port of call. Um, and then we do source as well, right? So I will build a list. I'll work with my recruiting partner and we really hone in on the ICP. We look for companies that we want to hire for. I think that's some of the discipline too about working with a recruiting partner is like writing the JD, actually being very clear on what you're optimizing for. And what your target kind of person looks like. And so I do that, and then we source. And even though we have great sourcing support, I do a lot of the reach out myself, right? So
Pretty much.
I'll either find people that I know to get me connected with people I want to have a conversation with, or I'll do cold outreach. I think it's much more effective and powerful coming from the hiring manager or leader in the company than, having someone on the recruiting team reach out. And I would say 95% of the people I've hired and senior leaders we've brought on have come from, those two routes, just direct network referral. But sometimes that's why we post roles. I'm like totally open to seeing who comes in inbound and who kind of finds out through more traditional channels. It can get really noisy. I think that's what scares people off from putting these senior roles out in the ether. It gets very noisy, but we've got a great recruiting team, so I'm not screening those. And so every now and then we do get a good cold applicant. I've got one on my team, and it's worked out great. And so 99% it's not where we get our more senior leaders from, but I'm certainly not closed off to the idea.
I agree. I hired a director of RevOps at Carta who was terrific, who was a cold applicant. I wouldn't have, I'd never have had her
No,
in
they
my.
would for whatever
And
reason they're not in your network. Yeah,
I think if you've got a great recruiting team and a great recruiting partner, you can get them what are the questions to ask and filter
exactly.
early. Okay,
Yeah,
so obviously Canva's an attractive company to work at. You post it, you're going to get a lot. Um, how do you? And I'm imagining people are trying to network into you, figuring out how to meet you, how to do all that stuff. Like how do you handle that? And are there effective ways where people can break the noise to get to you?
I love it. So I think so first and foremost, you have to network your way in. And
Yeah.
so people are reaching out to people I know, reach out to people in the company. You can kind of tell from the nature of that outreach though, who is like oh my goodness, they don't know you, but they're trying to get in and they are a strong referral versus someone who's just passing on a name. And so I think you have to sniff that out because yeah, you do get a lot of people reaching out. I try my best, and you have to admit, I try my best to reach out to everyone in my LinkedIn inbox, but I fail. There's just, as you said, Canva's a really attractive company, so we get a lot of people, but I try to reach out and, at least get back to folks at some point, even if it's after we fill the role. So I try to clear that out, but I'm not the best at all.
It's impossible when you post something big.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
I find is the recruiter bunt over and over and over again. Like I'll send everyone to the recruiter and the recruiter can screen them.
Yeah.
I remember I had this one person I posted and they sent me 4 people and I'm like, I knew they weren't good, but I sent them to the recruiter and the person got angry. They're like, they're for you. And I'm like, no, these ones weren't.
No, we triage, we have to triage. So yeah. Yeah.
Shifting over to interview process.
Mm.
How do you approach the interview? Do you have any like philosophies on interview process? I can dive deep into specifics, but I'd be curious just to unbound it for a minute.
So one thing I will say is most of my interviews, so we do, I can speak about this as well, but we do a challenge presentation at Canva as kind of the second to final step in most cases. And so for our top 2, 3 candidates, we spend a lot of time together. In the earlier process, I do 30-minute interviews. I don't have time to do anything more. And so that is not much time. And so I have had to design what a 30-minute interview looks like for me, because the last thing you want to do is walk out of an interview and not get a clear signal, yay or nay. You have to be definitive, yes or no. So I always prep because I think I want to keep myself honest too to how I want to run it to make sure it's the highest impact of time. So I always review resumes and experience for my own perspectives, and build my question list because you have to be very, very targeted, I think, with such a short amount of time. And then I always open my interviews in the same way, Andy. The question I ask is, hey, I've read your professional background. I'd love for you to just quickly talk me through your story and path to today's conversation. It's very open-ended, and I make sure I use the word quickly, but I don't
Your story and what was the last part of that was
your path to today's conversation.
I like that.
And so a few things I've said, I've got your professional background, and then I've asked you to cover it quickly. And so it's always very interesting how people approach that question. I think it gives you people are typically caught off guard because they're not necessarily expecting, a very broad question like that. But I think it's interesting what people share with you. And whether they cover whether they give you a good sense of why they're there, why they're applying, whether you get a good sense of who they are and what motivates them. And how much they kind of follow the brief and they too are intentional with how they want to spend 30 minutes. So failure state is someone who comes in and reads you your professional background.
Yeah.
talks at you for 20 minutes of the 30 minutes you've got allocated.
Yep.
Um, yeah, so I think it's been a good and effective one. I think you can kind of figure out very quickly if they are in control of the time, and they also have an agenda of what they want to convey and get out of the short amount of time you have together.
I hear you completely. I think you can also, yeah, that if you can't, if we are still talking 15 to 20 minutes after that question gets asked around quickly, like I know that our one-on-ones are going to be inefficient.
Yep.
They can't be I think you can also sense, like, the level of desperation, like,
Yes.
how much confidence they bring to the interviews as well,
Yep.
too. I like that. I think that open-ended question is one I use as well, too. The other one I always ask is just I always use I'm happy to spend as much time as you want on your questions, and I literally am, like, I could use the whole thing for that because if they don't come prepared, understand my business, and do that, that's the other one. Okay, so after your first standard question, assuming it doesn't take 20 minutes, do you then shift into question mode on your side?
Yes, I do. I prep because I think with any role, you're really probably looking to optimize for 3 or 4 characteristics, right, in a candidate. I'll give you some examples. So just hired an enablement leader, and so I was probably looking for, it's a team we need to build up. There's tons of hiring and, culture setting to be done, so team and talent building. I'm looking for, in particular with this role, very, like, clear prioritization framework and moving out of, like, order taking mode. I'm looking for, something specific to Canva, which is that building roll up your sleeves, and I'm looking for very strong craft, right? Like, you have to be a great enablement season leader. And I think if you've only got 30 minutes, you kinda have to pick the 2, like, maybe from a previous, screen or from a recommendation that they're good at 2 of those, and you really have to figure out, like, "Alright, I really wanna go deep in this 30-minute time on the other 2." So I will write questions and prepare questions again to make sure that I'm building my own confidence around those, and then it's that, like, 4 or 5 layer question structure. But I really love what you said, which is if you pick the wrong question that they may not be, you don't want to ding them as well. So I like the idea of giving them some optionality of how we can, the topic or the example that they might want to speak to.
Yeah, they can't accuse me of being unfair, and, it's like so at Princeton, I got a McKinsey case study. It was around makeup, by 2 women, and I felt it, right? Because I feel like women sometimes like, "Oh, you get the guy sexist cases." I failed it miserably because I just didn't know the topic, and,
Yes.
I feel like letting people pick that topic, you may have guys that love makeup, you may have women that love basketball. It's like
Yes.
the 2 mix and match, and it doesn't matter, but it was clearly one where I was just shaken and not
Yeah.
ready, and so I
Yeah.
feel like if you give somebody a choice of, like, what do you want it to be about is okay, you mentioned the challenge presentation. What is that? And is it different than a case study, or how do you think about that?
It's similar. I would say it's similar to case studies, just kind of in Canva language. But yeah, we do for every role. Like I did one. My boss, even up to the C-suite, we have folks do this challenge, and really what it is, it's a 45-minute to 60-minute group presentation. So we have a panel on our side, and folks get time to prepare a presentation. We really start by posing like a lofty question for the candidates. That is grounded in a real life business problem that we are trying to solve for. And so we talk a lot at Canva about, we set crazy big goals and make them happen. So we really set it at that level of ambition, but make sure, yeah, again, it's a real life example. So maybe on the go to market side, we talk about, if we're hiring for a partnerships leader, we'll say, hey, we give them a ton of business context and we say, why don't you craft for us your roadmap for what partnerships you build out, your strategy, like what partnerships you'd build out in your first year and why. Um, and I think it's really to test, like, one, if, can they dream big? And then can they think strategically and methodologically about the problem that we've posed? And then when you get into the challenge, it's like, first and foremost, you kind of test for their executive presence and how well they visually communicate. Do they use Canva, the product, as part of it too? That's like a very important piece for us. Because we don't really give them any guidelines on what it should look like. So we want to see them live and breathe our values too, which is great visual presentation. And then I think it's just like the perfect, same way that cases are, it's just the perfect way to simulate like a real life problem that we're solving together, that gets below the stories and anecdotes as well. So I wouldn't say it's easy because I think if you're driven and really want to work at Canva, you're going to invest a ton of time to have a great conversation. But if you're a leader at Canva, you're going to be leading conversations and helping groups make big decisions. And it's the perfect way to kind of do that before you've stepped through the door.
I liked your point on using Canva. I think I've kind of put that in our case study guidance, which is if you're going to interview with a PLG company, you damn well better use their product.
That's
And
right.
if you don't specifically say it, but if they don't, is it
If they don't, it's a good judgment. It's a good kind of test of their judgment, I would say.
is it 100% no if they don't use Canva?
I've made one exception. And
Okay.
it's worked out. But generally, I would say I don't wanna give too much away because I don't wanna put it out in the ether that, folks who would have otherwise not. But yes, I would say it's pretty much a deal breaker.
Yeah, it's I mean, geez, you gotta use the
Yeah.
tool. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. What percentage of people don't do it?
We're pretty lucky, I would say 5 to 10%. We get one every now and then. And it's very jarring for us on the other side. We're in this product every day. You say you wanna work here. It's a pretty jarring experience. Someone comes in, they open up another
PowerPoint.
productivity tool. That's right. Oh, yeah. God, yeah, definitely not PowerPoint, but yes.
That is hilarious. That's really fascinating. I just we're always beating these like dumb things into people, right? Like
Yeah. I
if
mean,
you're
the whole
going
point Canva makes it so easy to build a beautiful presentation. Why wouldn't you, you know? It's not like there's a huge barrier to entry, so
I think a lot of people that haven't been in B2B design market, like I use it every day. Like every
yes.
time we create a new unposted role, we use it to create a little thing. I've got my design team, but like there's a good chunk of people maybe on the GTM ops side that haven't used it before. But at the same time, you should.
You should.
You should understand like, do I want to work at this company? I remember before Box, I had used Box a ton and been using it, and so it made sense. Whereas when I interviewed at Dropbox, like I was
There's no way that you're gonna join a company that, where you haven't tried the product, right? And there's kinda no excuses when it comes to Canva, so
we
yeah.
had a fun one with Wade, the CEO of Zapier. We talked about like there's the flip side of do you overuse and overdrink your own team's Kool-Aid within a company, right? Which I won't go in too deep on that one, but it's a fun one. Okay, so maybe like later on in the interview process, we talked about interview question, AI fluency.
Right.
How about background references, and that side? Like, what's your approach to those? Anything unique?
I like to do them. If someone hasn't come through, again, as I said, one of those, like, referrals from my network or folks that I've worked with, I still like to do them. I think we've got to be really careful and respectful with candidates of how you approach it. So yeah, I typically like to do it. I try to look for a friendly and do it in a a tactful way. But I think they're important. But I think you also have to listen out again for nobody's going to want to say people are generally are on the side of uh, being polite, and so I think you have to look as well for the nuance in what they're saying behind the headline or the soundbite too. So, but I think they're important.
I would agree. I would agree. How do you onboard a candidate? You were saying before we hit record, like you're passionate about that side of things.
So I think so. I'm passionate about this because I there are two things going on with every new person who joins a company at this the stage that Canva's at. One, we expect impact pretty quickly. We're not one of those companies where it's like, oh, you're going to take 6 months to get settled in, and then maybe by then you've no, like I'm looking for impact in your first 3 months, and I'm going to throw you into every meeting, with every document, take on your team very, very quickly. That can be a very overwhelming experience as well. So on the other side, it's like, how do you do that and set them up well, but then also acknowledge it's like everything is noise when you're new, right? You don't know what's important and what's irrelevant or what's irrelevant right now. And so I invest a lot of time in building what I think are pretty beautiful onboarding packs. For all my new hires. And so in those, I cover really, there's like kind of four elements if I break it down. One is, uh, if you onboard a new candidate, you kind of have your first meeting, give them a voiceover. I write down my voiceover of like, hey, here's where the business is at. Zooming out, like this is the story of like where we've come from, where we're at, what we're working on, and where you fit in. I write all of that down. Because I think it's like it's one thing to deliver it in a one-on-one, it's another thing to have it and be able to look back on it. Um, I also put in, like, I'm very clear about your goals for the first we do the 30, 60, 90 framework, but, like, what are your expectations, right? In your first 30 days, I do expect you to take on your team, take on the cadence. I expect you to plug into this, and I expect you to deliver this quick win. I'm very, very specific so people can kinda track where they're at, and they can weed through, in all the listening tour that they're doing and all the meetings that they're joining, like, what are the things we're really gonna measure success on? um, key documents, like, full repository of like QBRs, dashboards, everything they need to know so they can self-serve those. And then we build out a very specific listening tour. It's a spreadsheet. So we list out every single person that we want you to meet with, and then we recommend between week 1 and 4, like the sequencing of when you do it. And we're not a strong EA or ABP culture, so every leader at Canva goes in and kind of books those themselves. But yeah, we're really specific with who you should talk to and in what sequence. So we try to manage that risk of overwhelm as well. But I spend a lot of time working on these because I think they just set people up for success, to be honest.
I could not agree more. When do you send them to people? Do you send so you always get the overeager person, right? Which
They
is
always ask for it, a
yeah,
couple weeks.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, I send them on day one
Me too.
because yeah, I want to respect people's time between roles, and I think it's just easier and safer, and I need you to be fully dialed in as soon as you're a real full-time employee. But people always ask, "Oh, I'd love to read it," and if you've got anything you wanna send me, I think people should take the break and yeah.
I do the same, and I always give people that break if they ask like, "Hey, can I take 2 weeks and slip into the next hiring cycle?" Because I'm like, I'm gonna expect that you're gonna do the same for us when you leave, and so that's really important.
I love that.
Okay, so if somebody's not a good hire, how do you spot it?
Oh, it's dreaded. I mean, look, when someone's not a good hire, it's very painful, right? Like, I think down to the IC level, at the leadership level, when you've made a bad hire, realistically, I think, Andy, it can cost you like a year or more, right? They've probably if they're a leader, they've probably hired people who are not A players. You've got to work through change management. It's very, very costly. How do I spot it? I think you kinda know pretty quickly. It's either I think it's one of 2 things. It's one, how they're showing up in the organization. I think
Mm,
everyone that we screen and everyone that we consider for the roles probably got good experience. I think where it doesn't go right is probably the culture mismatch. And so I said, I think you can kind of like either firsthand see it or you hear it from others about how they're showing up or navigating the organization. And I think the second one is like, what their experience is when they show up for one-on-ones in their first few weeks and months. Like, how are they energized? How does the role match kind of their expectations, in that great warm-up period when you were recruiting them? I think they're the two things that you kind of get a quick signal of pretty quickly.
I really like how you verbalize the how they're showing up, the energized. The other one I look for is I can generally tell in 2 to 3 one-on-ones if they're showing up and they're even if they don't know much, they're still able to frame their discussions,
Yes.
manage up I need people that can manage up to me
Yes.
and can leverage
Yes.
me, and so I've always said, like, I think the culture one is interesting because you may not see that for a while, people can
Mm.
sometimes hide that pretty well,
Yeah.
but I feel like the what I've tried to do is take that one and I heard a really good podcast here where basically he's like, "In our case study, I don't want you to take something, go away, and just present it to the team. I'm here, just like I would be your boss. Like, you can text me, you can call
I
me, you
love
can"
that. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and so I was like, "Wow, maybe I can get rid of that mistaken one-on-one." Like, I know within 3 so I do, like, a one-on-one a day for the first 3 weeks,
Okay.
and my thing is, like, tell me what you're learning, tell me what you're observing, tell me what could be better, tell me what you need, and then off of that, I can fill in the holes that I didn't put in my onboarding plan, and if somebody is not making effective use out of that time by the
Yes.
2nd week, I pull the cord.
I love that. I love that. Like, I haven't had to do that, many times in my career, but you have to be decisive as well. It's we strive to hire great people all the time, but it's naturally limited, right? Like the recruiting process. You never know what someone's like until they're in the company. So I like how decisive you are. But I do the same thing. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention with the Canva challenge, I am available. So I give them my cell phone number, my email, and I say, as your preparer, I'm available for as many 30-minute prep calls that you want. It's also a really good sign as to people who take you up on that, and come to those calls with like a draft and a clear ask. And I wish I had this data, or I'm making these assumptions. What do you think? And the people who are, no, I'll just see you at the presentation. I think it's a good simulation of how invested they are and what their working style is as well.
So what percentage of people take you up on that? I mean, I could see it being a little intimidating of like, am I gonna annoy my new boss? because like you might not want evening calls and you might be like, I've got kids, I've got family, or
Yeah.
you may be like, whoa, this person's way too intense, or it could be good. And so I feel like there's a risk there, and then people probably hold back on it. But at the same time, I would want exactly that. Like I would be like, how do I build a relationship with this
Yeah,
person?
how do you simulate like, it's a two like, the recruiting process is a two-way thing, right? Like, you also wanna make sure there's a mutual fit, and so I'd be eager too to spend time and see what that would be like working with another person. I think about when I put the offer out, I think about 20% of people take you up on it, but maybe 50% of the successful candidates have taken you.
Ooh, that's perfect. Yeah, 20% take up, but that is
There you go,
50% of
and
it.
a high you're an office person, a higher conversion rate, I think, on the people who do, so
Wow. Okay. That is yeah. It's like when you get the and we've got that in our thing, which is like if somebody says, "Hey, use me and give me time," like you should actually do that.
yeah.
Okay, I've got one or two just fun ones, and then we'll wrap
Okay.
with our
Yeah, go
traditional
for it.
closing question. Do you know your working style and your strengths, your weaknesses, and how do you communicate that in the interview process?
I love that question. I think I do. I've at different points of time invested in like writing, the classic user manual and that type of thing, but I haven't. It takes work to maintain, so I haven't honestly maintained it. I don't send that to every new hire. I have pretty good self awareness, I think, about how I show up and my style as a leader, and more specifically, what motivates me. Um, I don't think I talk people ask, right? Like, good candidates kinda ask, "Hey, what do you like as a leader?" But more often than not, I'm also interviewing for a lot of, like, my peers, other leaders in the company. People aren't asking that of me. I just try to, live and breathe and role model it. I think people can kinda tell through, one I told you one part of who I am is I'm an open, kind of vulnerable leader. I will be very honest during the interview process, what's and all about things that are going well, things that are not going well, and try to give them as much as I can a view on the inside as much as possible. And I am a leader who leads from the front. I'm in the details, as we talked about earlier. And so I'm happy to go there as well. And if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them down to the level of, the metrics and all of that good stuff. So I think it's more role modeling than anything, Andy. I don't speak to it explicitly during the process.
I can definitely see how like emotionally aware you are, which is powerful, right? You even said early on, like I shuffle my team off, and like some people may not realize that. So that was really neat. Okay, last final closing question.
Yeah.
Who was the best hire you've ever made, and
I
why?
thought I knew so I knew you were gonna ask this question because I've listened to your podcast before, so I tried my best to prepare for it, but it's a tough question, and it's like choosing you're a parent, it's like choosing your favorite
Oh,
child.
you don't. I mean, the number two and number three, no, they're also special to you too.
Okay, good. Alright, I love it. Well, I mean, I've got lots of it's kind of classic, but I've got a ton of people who I hired and super proud of because you hired them as an IC or they led a small team and you gave them more and they got more and then you hired them again. So I have a couple of those folks. I would say one's on my team now who I hired as an IC and they grew into a manager and they grew into a director and they came over with me too. And so that's one. I will say though that one of the people I am most proud of is someone who's now at OpenAI.
Mm,
And the thing I loved about him was he's one of these people who I consider like a force multiplier.
yeah,
Um, Not just a good culture ad, but someone who joined the team and saw how we were doing things and was like, guys, like we can do this faster, we can do this better. They're kind of people who set the pace and ambition. And I think you got to have it. I learned the impact of kind of those like force multiplier type people from hiring him, and so now I kind of look for it a little bit, and I follow that pattern. And he's off to great things, obviously, but they just bring a different level of intensity and excellence. He's someone I'm really proud of.
I love that. Yeah, I've got a couple of those people too.
Mhm.
Do they also ruffle a couple feathers as well?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
yeah,
they
yeah,
come
yeah,
and
yeah.
they say, "How you been doing things is stupid, guys." No, not really in those exact words, but they challenge the thinking and they challenge the team, and yeah, you come to love it. But yeah,
You do. You hope those people keep that passion forever. Well, Jessica, thank you so much for sharing.
Oof.
I've gotten to know you little bits here and there, but it's the first time we've really sat down to talk, and I'm really impressed with how you think about
This has
hiring.
been fun. Thanks, Sandy, for having me. This has been really, really fun.
Have a great day.